but we've got some concepts that a lot of people tell us that do help them. So that's me, Nigel Dunant.
Okay, next, I'm Eric Murphy. I am a founder here at BabelQuest. So we started the company 14 years ago. I'm a director. I'm a principal consultant. I look after our sales team, and I tend to go with our larger clients. So I've led as the executive sponsor on implementation projects in all of our enormous implementation clients. So we've done something smaller scale of companies right through to last year. We had a really large scale successful implementation of Unipart. We were a 12,000 person team in 72 sites in 7 divisions, £1 billion turnover company and growing. So we're implementing HubSpot there for an organization that size. So we've seen all of the challenges from all kinds of different sizes of business. Yeah, so I'm based here in Abingdon and Oxfordshire, and steeped very much in HubSpot CRM. I've been using HubSpot CRM right back from when it was just Sidekick, and we've been involved in all of the iterations of it so far, and all the iterations of the Sales Hub, and we work very closely with HubSpot's product team on testing and developing things long before you actually get out in the real world. So I'm a big fan, a long-time user, and obviously I've got all of the battle scars from implementing it in lots of different businesses. But we've got a really good high success rate, so there should be some good things to share.
Yes, absolutely. And I think everyone here wants to jump straight into, our tips and tricks and things, but I think we need to talk a little bit around CRM in general. And I think a big reason why people struggle with the adoption of CRMs is because it's just evolved so much. And obviously HubSpot is a big CRM, and they have 1 million product updates every month. So Eric, let's start with you. Talk to us about the role of the CRM in the sales strategy and how important that is.
So I think the important thing to note with CRM is that it's evolved an awful lot, and CRM is a bit of a catch-all phrase. Every single software platform that a business uses claims to have some form of CRM, from whether it's your accounting system, some ERP, something that manages HR. There's lots of different expressions of what CRM actually means, and I think it's important to note that these kind of evolved in certain terms. I mean, they used to be on green screens and server-based stuff on terminals. They then went through that boost of like being big on-prem things, and then out into the cloud with obviously Siebel and Salesforce making those moves. But even those bigger ones, they're still the same thing as they were before. It's an internal database. It's a relational database that salespeople put things into, finance take things out of, and then they somehow have an argument about who gets paid commission or not. Lately, marketing came to the same list and said, can we use all of this stuff? And found that most of it was nonsense. It was out of date. It was incorrect. And that still pretty much persists in all that kind of second generation of cloud-based CRMs that came from that same route. And HubSpot didn't come from there. We're all very lucky in the HubSpot partner program that they built something that was built fundamentally different. It started as a marketing tool in the cloud, trying to understand buyer interaction, and it happened to write that information into a contact record, which they then aggregated onto company records, and then thought, well, we have a deal record as well. We might have a fledgling CRM system. What they did is they actually created a proper customer-centric CRM system. And if anybody's been in the IT industry for long enough, they know that idea of customer centricity, of customer lifecycle management, all of those big terms of the connected customer were virtually impossible from integrating all these different systems. But HubSpot hit the one core thing that you could truly integrate around, which is the actual one-to-one engagement. And so it just so happens that sales is all about that one-to-one engagement. It's about one person engaging with one other person. And that's something that has traditionally been face-to-face with sales, and has gradually moved online via phones and all kinds of things. And then we had a big acceleration in that. In fact, we had a complete need that was the only show in town when the pandemic hit, and everything had to be not just digital first, it had to be digital only. So there's a big push to these things, and this is where the massive growth in CRM systems have come about. But we're seeing a challenge for sales strategy when it comes to CRM, because there's been so many technology tools that have been added to the market. It's proliferated a huge amount of things, but none of them have really moved the needle. None of them, it's just like the table stakes for being in sales, and B2B in particular is you just need more and more and more and more technology, but it's not actually really leading through to any kind of, big growth in sales or big growth in revenue or margins at the same time. It's not on its own. It isn't a magic bullet and isn't going to work. But by God, you can't do it without it. So these kind of table stakes are a challenge for sales leaders. I'm thinking about, all of these more and more of technology and techniques involved with them are point solutions that just add to the pile, and they cause distraction and they cause inconsistencies. So that's for me is the reason why, if you're looking at your sales strategy and you're looking about how you get your CRM as a core part of that, is because your sales strategy requires you to kind of go upwards and to the right kind of continually, which means that you need a system and you need a process for doing those things, and you need tracking that enables the right activity at stock. Can we get this stuff right? And then can we do continuous improvements over time? So the job, if I sum it all up, really, sales strategy is get good and then keep getting better over time. Try doing that without a CRM system today, and you're just going to be on a failure. So that's a succinct way of answering that.
I think so. Yeah, I do. So that's kind of why CRM is important in sales. And then, Nigel, what are some considerations to make maybe before you've even started implementing it, like to get off to a good start?
Yeah, really good question. And I was just looking through the chat here, and a lot of what I'd like to talk about is to address the concerns of, I think we got Kerry Rayner, who was great point. And I think we all relate to this, struggling to get the people to buy in.
Mm-hmm.
Rene or Rini Rindick, similar thing. What can he do to get people's buy-in? And Tom asking about what we can do to get ready to launch this. And I think that often the point is really missed. Successful CRM implementation, it is really nothing to do with the CRM and all to do with how we manage change in an organization. Because if we want people to adopt it, we've got to get them to change their behavior, change their habits, and this is the fundamental challenge. So the other awful truth, and I've got some slides here, I don't know whether it's worthwhile sharing them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do I do the share screen or do you?
Yes, you should be able to do it, okay. Yeah.
So if I can just, let me just see. Here we go. Let me do this. So, and I think if you could take anything away from this, what I would suggest is that it's not a CRM problem, it's an adoption problem, and it's all about management change. Here's the facts of life. People will resist change. They'll even fight change that is bad. Another fact of life is people will resist change, even fight it, even if the change is good for them. And if you have any doubt about that statement, just consider how many people committed a New Year's resolution to go to the gym. And, they know it's good for them. They know they should get up in the morning and do some exercise and go to, but how many of them, and they give themselves excuse, it's too cold, I can't find my car keys. There's a psychological subconscious resistance that occurs to any sort of change. Even if people are super motivated and they do have total buy-in, they can't achieve this overnight. And the manager here is the person that can provide a framework for this that will either make it successful or unsuccessful. There's a little tool that we have that we call the change reactor tool. And I'll just give you an example here on this slide. When people are faced with change, they go through a number of emotional reactions. Some people will have a high amount of anxiety. Some people will be in denial, don't need to change. Some people absolutely want to change. It's about time too, and they'll leap on it.
Nigel, I think we're not on the slide that we're talking about, actually, I think.
So we can see your selector page with the bars down the side. I think if you just go down there rather than doing on the slide sharing, they might pick it up on.
How about that?
Yeah, we're back there now. Can you click down to slide 3 and see what happens?
I'm going backwards now. What do you want? Emotional reactions to change. Can you see that?
On that screen.
Always a technical difficulty when presenting with slides.
All right.
There we go. That worked. So when we can now all see slide 4.
Okay, you've got my whole thing. Okay, great. You can all see slide 4.
Yes.
Let me just do this. I've got to make sure I can see you too. Otherwise, I feel like I'm presenting blind. So there's one thing that the manager can do before implementing the change is just attempt to figure out what the reaction is likely to be from the different people on their team and what they might be able to do to mitigate for that. So, for example, if I go to the next slide here, you can see a bunch more emotions there. And we've got this and a little tool, change reactor tool. It's just a little checklist that talks about the typical reactions to change, a little bit of explanation about it. And then your role as the manager is to figure out what we might be able to do in terms of a strategy to mitigate for that. Next slide, if you're okay with this. There are 3 main areas that I think we need to consider. What I've just been talking about is team acceptance from the individuals, that we understand what their source of the resistance to change might be and how to overcome that. The obvious thing to do is to have, and a lot of people do this, they'll have clearly defined objectives. But then the challenge is putting those clearly defined objectives into an actual action plan. So everyone is clear about what their part of that process needs to be in order to make sure it happens. Now I'm going to skip through a couple of slides because this is the person with the question about the 80-20. I would suggest before you even start implementing the change, you've got to, anyone involved in this has to be able to answer these questions. And I've changed them specifically to CRM here. So ask your own people, what do you want to, why do you want to acquire the skills and habits to use a CRM? What's in it for you? If the people involved can't answer that question, what's in it for me? It might happen. That's a rhetorical question, but if you want to answer, Bridget, if you didn't know what was in it for you, what's going to happen?
Oh, exactly. You're not. I think this is what you're trying to say is about accountability. You're putting the onus on the team. So something that quite a lot of people in the chat have said is about how they can't get their sales team involved and they on board. Switching it round, turning the tables round, and asking them these questions, right?
Most people approach it the opposite way around. And the image I have is of the manager trying to push a massive boulder up the hill. And they've just got to constantly be on it. They've got to constantly be, it's exhausting and they probably will never get to the hill. This thing's going to roll down and crush them. However, if you have gone through a process and everyone in that organization understands why we need to do it organizationally and what's in it for me and why I want to do it, now the manager's job is flipped. There's this massive boulder, which is the people's desire to be really good at using this thing. And the boulder's just rolling down the hill. And all the manager needs to do is now steer this thing left and right. So having that internal motivation supplied by your people is key. That's a whole other subject in itself, but I just want to leave that there with you. Important, I think, a good question to ask, to double check that, is to ask them, hey, I literally like to ask people this, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your level, your personal level of commitment to doing what's necessary to get this thing to work? And, 1 being, I'd rather be golfing. 10 is, hey, within a healthy work-life balance is the most important thing on my plate this year. So if they give you something less than a 10, you just might want to examine that. Oh, that's interesting. Why a 7? What's stopping you from putting it as a 10? And they're going to have valid reasons. You'll understand that. But I want to know where they are on that commitment level. Then I'm going to get more specific. Now, this relates to the plan. It's no good saying, hey, guys, go on the training. Now you got to use it. They're going to have to spend some time on their own or in a group learning how to use it. They're then going to have to figure out how to make it a habit. Do they know? Here's another question to ask. Do you know where to go if you get stuck with this thing? Who's your CRM coach? Who's your accountability partner? Where do you go for peer support? And by asking your people these questions, you are putting the responsibility, we're treating them like adults and not kids. You're putting the responsibility on them. Does that make sense?
I like that, actually, treating everybody like adults and giving them the space to come to you is so important. And all of this is like the prep work, isn't it? Before you even get into the nitty-gritty of training and the actual tool itself.
Yes, absolutely. If you don't have these questions answered and they run into trouble, who do they point a finger at? Who do they point at when they get into trouble? I think they point the finger back at the manager.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Hey, I knew this wasn't going to work. We don't really need it. It's too complicated, blah, blah, blah.
All these excuses and reasons why we can't and all the rest of it, and then that derails your sales meeting. So you end up spending the whole time arguing about the CRM and never get anywhere near to doing a deal with you.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time you get pushback from someone about, oh, this thing's too complicated, all you have to do is go back to the why question. Hey, remind me. I've forgotten. What was your reason in the first place for wanting to become really competent at using a CRM? Remind me. And then they'll bring up all the reasons that they had and they just forgotten about in the moment. So, and their reasons are the ones that they will believe, not your reasons. So you might have some reasons that are very valid to you and valid to the company, but it's their reasons that are most important to them. So you'll hear things like, oh, well, crikey, if I want to do anything in today's world, I've got to be able to demonstrate I'm competent with the CRM. Or, oh, boy, I've got a real phobia about anything that's anything to do with technology, but I can see that if I can get over that phobia, I can save huge amounts of time. And I'm sick of staying late in the office. I'd like to get home earlier a few days a week. So whatever their reasons will motivate them far more than the company reasons or your reasons as the boss. So step 1, find out what their reasons are. And then it all falls into place from that. Is that okay?
That's great. I think let's move on to more of the challenges and the strategies of when you're actually doing the CRM implementation. Eric, have you got thoughts on that one?
So in terms of the top challenges?
Yes.
So the number 1 is overcomplicating it. I mean, the amount of times we get briefs brought to us where there's a 400-line Moscow matrix, and we just scroll down, we go, this must have offline access for the mobile app. Like, have you ever used a mobile app? All of them work with offline access. It's nothing to do with the CRM system. But it's just far too complicated, and designing for requirements that you don't really have. It's like, well, we think the sales team need this, or we think they want that. Nobody's actually gone to ask them, or even the sales, but you take them out and go, well, I think I would like this, that, and the other, and go, realistically, when do you actually ever use it? So the making it too complicated, but ultimately making it boring. I mean, if you're starting to get into depths of tons of spreadsheets and documentation, just trying to design a thing in the first place, it's not going to be much fun to use, and people aren't really going to be that engaged with it further down the line. With Gabrielle and Rebecca have put the question in the chat, what happens if they don't believe in the need for a CRM? Well, there's the problem, right? We need to get them to believe in the need for the CRM, and it's really not about them, it's about your customers. Your customers are complicated. Your customers will see you in all kinds of different channels. They will, yes, they absolutely will. You will know who they are. Like your next prospect, you might have met at a networking event 3 years ago. You might have worked with them 10 years ago, but it was the trigger from the CRM. That was because the marketing picked up a need now and put it back in your eye line. That makes it more compelling and makes it more important to have the CRM system, because you don't get any of those digital signals if the system isn't tracking any of it, and if you're not putting the work in the first place. And I get that. Hey, look, I got my spreadsheet. It works. Well, can you show me the trend? Can you show me it working over time? Can you show me how you do that continuous improvement and get better? Because you can't track any changes. You can't look at what was there before. You can't tell if something's been deleted, if it's been overwritten. You can't measure any of those things without any sophistication, unless you've gone so far down the route, you've effectively built yourself a CRM system out of the spreadsheets. So I get that there are challenges in dealing with salespeople, but a lot of this will come from us telling them what to do. Basic nature of salespeople is they don't like being told what to do. Asking them questions and they'll talk for hours, as in what's going on here. But I think that to Nigel's point, that working on the reasons for them to use it is the first principal part, and then showing them how to be able to use it when you understand what it is they're trying to do. So it's far more important to ask them first before you tell them anything. It's probably better to ask them and then show them what they asked for actually working live. You can add a few extra things onto it as well, but I think that the top challenge there really is designing it without them in context, and enforcing strict parameters on what it is that you want them to build, and coming at it like it's an IT project, a system project. It isn't. This is about, how do we help you engage in more people? What would be useful in order to get you into more conversations, the things that you actually like doing?
Nigel, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I'm looking in the chat here as well. There's some really good stuff going on here. I love Rebecca Veldon, who says she joined the system post for the launch, and her sales people hate HubSpot, so she's hoping she can provide them with something. And that's a great question. I'll touch on that a little bit here. But Rebecca, if you want to email me or what have you, I can go into a bit more detail, but I will give you a little answer for that. And then I noticed we've got a lovely conversation here. Again, Gabriella. What if they don't believe they need a CRM? So I think these are, again, that question particularly it shows the importance for having a really good discussion beforehand. I've done sort of workshops with sales teams where essentially I'll start, and I guess I can do this because I'm a bit of an outsider. That sometimes helps. But I'll start off by acknowledging, hey, you guys are all great. You're fantastic at selling. The last thing you need is a CRM system. Certainly no reasons that I can think of for that you would need a CRM. I'm just curious. Let me split the room randomly into two groups. You guys over here, I want you we're going to have a debate. You guys come up with all the reasons why there's no need to have a CRM system. And you guys over here come up with all the reasons why you should have a CRM system. And what the magic of this is that you can help your people give themselves the answer just by asking the right questions up front. Another way of doing this is just to acknowledge, hey guys, we absolutely do not need a CRM today. Totally agree. I'm kind of skeptical that we even need one tomorrow. But if there was a reason why we might need one for tomorrow, what might that be? So ask the questions like that and treat them as adults. These are intelligent, smart people. And if we let them give us the answers, they absolutely will. Now, if they've had a bad experience at a CRM system, but you know what, I'm tempted in chat to ask people to say yes if they've ever had a bad experience of a CRM integration or any kind of IT system. If you've ever had a bad experience with one of those, I think what we'll end up with is 100% everyone has had bad experiences of these. And I think we need to acknowledge that. So the challenge of implementing a CRM system is not only this challenge we have now, but we're going to be tarred with the same brush as all those managers or companies that they worked with in the past that gave them a nightmarish experience with an initiative similar to this. And we got to acknowledge that up front. A great question to ask is, once they've shared with you all those bad experiences, is just, okay, guys, what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen today? Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen here. Again, let them come up with what essentially is going to be the plan for the implementation.
There is an interesting point in the comments there as well from Carl, and it kind of points to the other side of the picture. So while we're spending all this time being nice to the salespeople and asking them the questions and finding out what they really need and supporting them and coming up with the reasons, we also need to be able to apply the business rules to it as well. So, you know, I get the question that, what happens if they're already hitting target and they don't need to do anything? Well, if they're hitting targets all the time, why are you spending money on a CRM system? The challenge is that the business is probably driving growth. And if you're not driving growth, then you bought HubSpot for the wrong reason, because it's what it's for. Fundamentally, it's what it's for. So if you bought the CRM system, it's designed to be able to, if they're all great and doing the best things right now, and there's no issues whatsoever in the sales team, one, I'd like to hire them all. But two, you should be able to systemize what they do to help keep them on rails and make it easier so that they can sell more over time. So that, in order to be able to get things up and running and get that growth in there, requires some rules from the business. So you can codify these things together. And if we look at what we did with Unipart on this in particular, is that we set out a set of design principles at the beginning. And one of those in there was like, this has to be simple enough for everybody to use. So if you're going to do anything that's complicated or sophisticated in here, that's just banned right now, because we need to get a user adoption as high as we possibly can. So that's a challenge to everybody, is that you need to be able to use this every single day in every interaction with everybody. Just keep it simple, and let's measure people on that. But there had to be that top-down view of, I want to be able to see everything across the whole organization and split it every way. So you have to have some standard functionality here. Now, tell us what you want, and we'll ask you all the right questions, but we've got to balance that with the business requirement as well, which is to drive additional growth in whatever metric is that the business has got at this moment. But there is a balance, and I think a principled approach to that is the right way to be able to get those things together.
And from a HubSpot specific point of view, obviously, Eric, you've used it, I don't know how many years, a lot of years. So you know all of the updates that have come out recently. What, from a HubSpot tool and feature point of view, would help in getting the sales team on board and using it properly?
Well, it could be really obvious and say all of the latest things in sales, or all the latest AI things and all that kind of stuff, but actually it's the first ones. The first bit is like the connection through to your inbox. Just make sure your emails are sat in here, make sure your calls are sat in here, and look at the activity feed. The activity feed in HubSpot is often something that when you're implementing it with the sales team, they go, oh God, turn that off. I've got a full inbox already. I'm getting things like, I don't want another thing. And so you make them realize that this is showing you those signals back was like, it's like the person meeting your eye contact across the room. If you just seen that somebody has reopened an email that you sent them, they already knew what was in it, qualify for need, and they've just done it now, qualify for timing. If you get a lead from a target customer qualified for need and timing, pick the phone up. And if you start getting that kind of thing happening, and you can start driving email communications and connections on LinkedIn and all the other things and that drive these feed, they're stuck coming back from the activity feed, you should be kept busy all day responding to people who are in market, not just your target customer, but they're in market for your services right now. Combine that with the meetings link. The meetings link, I get booked 4 or 5 times a day, every single day, by people wanting to buy things or wanting to ask me questions at somewhere in the buying journey. So really, if your sales team are not using the meeting links, take everything off them until they use it. Get that sorted out first, get them to look at the activity feed, and then everything else they'll find their way into is the 2 most fundamental parts we're trying to expose. Somebody wants a conversation with you, and how do we make it easy as possible for that conversation to happen, either by them booking you into a meeting or them signaling to you that now is the time to pick the phone up.
That's really helpful. And I think something that has been written in the chat is about gamifying it a little bit. Obviously, salespeople are super competitive. So what are the reports that they should be using, Eric, to gamify it and have a leaderboard?
So you got to look at the things that actually matter for the salesperson, the things that actually move the needle. So something that there's tons and tons of reports and sales analytics in HubSpot, and it's kind of can get blinded by that. I would stick to the real basics, like what are the minimum daily behaviors, and this is something that Nigel and I worked on implementing here quite a while ago. What do you expect people to do on a daily basis? So not what's going to happen this month and this quarter and this year, planning today. How many dials are you going to make? Right? How many emails are you going to send? How many connection requests are you going to do? How many meetings are you going to have? On any day, it doesn't matter how busy you are, then you could still make this many calls. And I challenge them to come up with what that is. And they usually start with a low number, then hold them against that every day. So if they come and say, I think regardless of how busy I am, I could make 10 call attempts a day. Get them to establish that over the first week or 2 weeks, make sure it happens every single day, and then get them to say, well, what could you raise it to now? Get to 12, get to 15, get to 20, get to 25, get to 30. You'll run into some problem somewhere where you haven't got enough phone numbers to call, but then that changes the dynamics on things. The first thing is activity-based reporting that helps you move the needle. You may change this over time as well if you find that you're actually quite good at doing this stuff and it drives like you've got a pipeline full of activity, but now you actually need to spend lots of time working that deal pipeline. Do you start looking at those the activity metrics and working out is there a slightly different balance of things to be done in there? But I would use that as part of the continuous improvement things. But activity metrics all the way.
And I think we've written an article about this before. It's called the Cookbook Dashboard. So I'll send that around to everybody so you can have a look at what we use internally and what works really well. So you can build that yourself. There's a bit of a framework there that you can copy. I think something that we haven't really touched on is training. So Nigel, where does training come into all of this?
HubSpot training.
Just training on in general, training on the platform. Where does it kind of come into the time frame, to the roadmap?
Yes. So before, and I've said, who was it? It was Tom Moore. Yeah, ready to launch in that stage there. The mistake that people make is they do not have clearly defined times in people's schedules for them to get the necessary help, hands-on training that they need in order to be able to implement the system in the way the company is asking for. I'll tell you what works and what doesn't work. What doesn't work is the fire hose technique. Stick everyone in a room for 2 days, share a bunch of slides and tell them all the things it will do and how it does it, and then expect them to go back to their desk 2 days later or 3 days later, but implementing it. Doesn't work. The best way of doing it is a little and often. So when we recently went through our own CRM HubSpot implementation here. The only reason why, by the way, the only reason why I'm any good at this is I've failed in so many of these implementations. So I knew that unless we had in our diary the allotted time, so we put in initially once a day, we had an hour, which went down to half an hour slot once a day, and then that became an hour twice a week, and then it became an hour once a week. And now everyone's comfortable with doing what they do on. And by the way, no HubSpot trainer in the room, just us sharing best practice amongst ourselves about what we learn, helping each other. It's good. The mistake to make is you can avoid all these problems. I'm too busy. I can't attend the training session. I've got this. You can avoid that completely by just putting the implementation date. Okay, let's start implementing it on this date. And now, we're looking out in the future here, 3 months maybe, where everyone's diary is clear. And then you've got the 4 o'clock problem solving calls for HubSpot dialed in every single day for the next month. And then half an hour for the month after that, and then once a week. So you can plan it all ahead. It prevents any anxiety or any problems.
I think that's.
I don't know if you wanted that as an answer on training.
Well, I think that's good, and I think what's really important of what you just said is those excuses of I'm too busy, that takes too much time. That kind of goes back into using the tool itself. I think somebody's asked a question about that. Is people don't want a new tool because it takes time to learn, and how is that going to help them be quicker at their job? It's not. It's going to take them time. So Eric, or Nigel, what kind of?
I was going to say a really important point to make very early on in this is, and this has to be sort of the CEO of the company has to be absolutely clear. The reason why we are introducing this is to save you time and make you money. That's the only reason why we're doing this. That's the objective. Every single training meeting you have on it, every single follow-up meeting, you can remind people on this. The purpose is to save you time and make you money. And there may be other personal objectives on top of that as well, but that it keeps everyone's head screwed on straight. Let them know that their help is going to be required to make this true. If they're a passenger on this, all bets are off. If they're participants, active, then they'll get the results that they want.
Eric, anything to add to that? I think something somebody said was about when it's commission based as well. People are even more. They get emotion about it, don't they? Because that's their income.
Yeah. This system is designed to make you money, and it should be done. It should be designed to that on the outset. So there's no argument about it. And I did see a remark in there. Oh, I'm too busy selling. I can't enter the stuff on HubSpot.
Yeah.
So that has to be addressed up front. And who are the best people to be able to address that?
Managers.
You could say the manager, but I think you ask the people. Okay, I understand. I hear you. What might be a reason to believe the opposite? The more, if I get good at using HubSpot habitually, I'm going to make more money on my commission.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you've got a team of salespeople who are they can lean into that competitive nature, you find the ones who are going to pilot this. Who's going to be a champion? Who's going to be your superstar on this? And find the ways to be able to show that they can smash these numbers. So we've certainly seen it where we created a leaderboard, and we just looked at sales activity, number of sales activities, and we didn't care what they were, just total number of sales activities. And we found that the average number of sales activities across the group was about 1,200 a month. The winner of the competition on the leaderboard did 6,000. The closest person to him was 4,000, and everybody else was sub 1,000. So they started looking and going, well, hang on a minute, how's he done that? And that drove this inspiration, because what was happening there, apart from doing all that activity, he had the biggest pipeline and he was making the most money. So you can counter that by saying, well, if you don't want to work faster and smarter and make more money, well, these guys will do it over here, and then you can learn off them later. How about we do that instead?
So I think that is Eric. That is absolutely fantastic, And I think that's an important thing to do when you're looking at your people. Figure out, they come in three categories, really. There's the early adopter. Like these guys, if you told them they weren't going to be first in the implementation of the CRM, they would be banging at your door, demanding to be in that first group. The early adopters, they just love wrestling with new stuff. Then there are the people who aren't necessarily going to be an early adopter, but once they can see the company is serious and this is going to stick, they are going to be what we would call powerful change agents. They will make sure this goes deep and wide throughout the company. And then there are other people in the organization who actually may not even be the main users of the CRM, but they are influencers within the organization. And understanding those different peoples and the different roles they can have in that can really help. And I've got a tool here, but it's as simple as just writing down a little list beforehand. Tom, you can do this. Who's going to be my early adopters? Who are going to be my change agents? And who are going to be my influencers? Then you might sit down individually with these and have come a little strategy for them and just ask them for their help. Where do you think you can help with this?
I think there's another issue in there as well that's related to that bit of like not overcomplicating it at the start. If people are saying that, I think this is just going to take us too much time to implement and I'm a bit too busy selling, the whole you've overcomplicated things. You should be using technology to simplify what you do with salespeople, not make it more complicated for them. So there's a comment in there about 1 minute drop down. I would say anything that's requiring that level of admin, does it need to be done post call? Can it be done when a deal stage changes when they're doing the admin anyway? We've certainly seen a lot of RevOps people who will go back and update the data once the deal is actually closed. Then let's not slow things down in the middle, keep it moving. And if there's things that we need to sort out for attribution purposes or to make the reporting for deal velocity and probabilities and all those kind of things work in deal sources, we can actually do that post-sale if we needed to. Or there can be different stages in the process, so it doesn't have to slow people down. If you're finding out the resistance, I don't have time right now to update that field, and they don't do because it's not valuable for them at that point, there may be a point further down the line that you can catch up on that with. And I'd say that if they're looking at, I don't want to do this at all at that moment, it's because it's a priority issue. There's something else that's more important for them doing at that particular moment. To split the importance away from its timing, and then you can have it reprioritized through the process. I think that's probably a way to think about it and see if that gets you anywhere.
I think we've touched a little bit on like activity leaderboards and things like that kind of measure they're using it. But are there any other ways that we should be tracking adoption, or how will people measure this?
So one of my favorite ones for tracking how well the user adoption is going is not so much leaderboards and reporting are all great, but I want them to show me with regular reviews which of the workarounds that you have do you no longer use. Show me the spreadsheets you just don't use any. You used to rely on, you don't use it anymore. What other tools were you using that you just simply don't need to use anymore? If you find that the number of workarounds that they're doing are dropping and they're moving more into the platform, then you're winning. If you find that they're adding more and more and more things and they're working outside of the system, you've got a configuration problem. And you need to be able to get back into that and say, well, why would you as soon as you get anything out into a spreadsheet, it's out of date immediately and getting worse. We need to find a way in here to be able to automate all of that stuff so that you've got faster decision making, because the faster decision making gets you into more conversations. So I think there's looking around the system and looking at the behavior of people. Ultimately, spending the money on a CRM system to be able to drive more growth is about changing the behavior of the sales team, the sales management, and ultimately the rest of the organization as well, because we're trying to change the behavior of the buyers to get them to spend more money more frequently and tell more people about it. So it's all behavioral stuff. You've got stuff in the CRM. What else is there outside of that you can see in the real world?
Okay, Nigel, anything to add to that one?
Yeah, no, I just as you know, Eric, I just see this as it's the behavioral change challenge. That's all it is. I do like what you said earlier on, Eric, and I wanted to pick up on it earlier on when you mentioned it about keeping things simple, especially in that implementation phase. eat the elephant one bite at a time. And rather than expecting everyone to be doing everything on the CRM, start them off on just doing the simple stuff. If part of their role is to enter new prospective customers into the system, then I know that we can take it for granted if we've been using HubSpot for a long time, but for a new person, then just getting that email in the right place, doing that, tagging them correctly, putting the right, categorizing them, put them on the list, whatever you got to do with it, getting that right is a key part in the process. So what I found is a lot of my clients will choose to start there. And maybe even for the first month, all you're doing is making sure that people regularly enter new data. And once they've got the hang of that, that was simple enough. You almost, they get to the stage where ideally they're chomping at the bit to do more.
Yeah.
Slow and steady.
Yeah. Instead of overwhelming them, get them to the point where like, hey, well, hang on, I don't want to be just entering. I want to do, how do I do this template email thing there? How do I put something in a pipeline? How do I create a deal? It's good to create a bit of a pull thing with the sales guys than push. If you push, it'll drown them.
I've got two really good examples of just best practice processes that you can follow that solve an admin problem inside HubSpot. So have you seen on the deal pipeline board, the deal cards themselves? You can customize those and you can have next activity on them. And if you've got no next activity booked, it says no next activity booked and it goes gray. Or you can have next activity is in 2 days or in 5 days. And you think like, sales team are never going to do that. If it's hooked to your calendar, in the call that you have with somebody, before they get out of the call, say, right, when can we meet again? When should we schedule our next call for? And if you get them to agree to a date and time, you put it in your diary, automatically creates the meeting in the timeline and shows in the deal that there is a next activity booked and it's happened there. If you're wise enough to be able to put a note in, so what should I say to remind us of what it is that we're doing, or even better, have a full-on agenda in there, then that's coping with that bit of admin in the pipeline. If you set a rule that a deal cannot be in the pipeline without a next activity booked on it, then they've got two options. They can either agree the meeting and get it into the diary show it shows up, or if the other person says, I can't commit, I need to go and find out with some other people, I'll have to come back to you. So that's fine. Well, why don't I set a task and I'll give you a call. I'll give you a call in 5 days, just to make sure that we don't drop the ball on this. I'll set a task as a reminder to call you. That task also sits in the future in the timeline, shows as an next activity book. So then you can have a simple thing on the top of a dashboard showing number of deals with no next activity booked and a number on it. And if that's not a 0, they have to click on that number, get the deal, go in there, and then go and get in touch with them to book the next activity. So it's a great way to be able to keep a really clean deal pipeline, have some really nice rules around it, but it's virtually no admin from the salespeople. It's just good practice in booking the next meeting. Likewise, writing notes in the CRM. Why don't you write the notes in an email to summarize the call you just had and email it to them? And then it appears in the timeline. So you can see that interaction and you see their response. So noting the CRM, documenting next actions, setting tasks, all those kind of things, just make it part of the actual call itself.
So here's a suggestion. I think because this came up in a couple of questions here, getting people to use it or what are the best. Anyway, rather than training everyone up to use a particular feature, here's what you might want to do. Now, I'm assuming that you have regular best practice sessions. Even if you implemented HubSpot 2 years ago, it doesn't matter. I think you have regular best practice sessions where the team shares amongst themselves, hey, this is what I've been notified. I can do this. I can do this. So if you introduce one of your early adopter team members to something exactly like Eric told you about just now, at the moment where they can really use it, and they go, wow, that's great. Da, da, da. At the best practice session, who's going to be training everyone up on that? It's going to be your early adopter. And the thing about the early adopter inside the organization is that they have far more credibility with everyone else on the team than the train. If you have a trainer saying this is what you should do, people resist. If you have an early adopter who says, damn, I'm saving a ton of time with this little trick, let me show you, they all want to do it. Does that make sense? Psychologically, it's a huge difference. So again, Tom, going back to your thing here, you schedule the best practice sessions. Get those in the diary. Give people, the early adopters, the opportunity to share all the tips and tricks that they're using that are relevant to everyone else in the room, and they will adopt it. And they'll certainly pay. If you're a trainer and you're telling people that their eyes glaze over, if you're a colleague and you say, man, I made money on this using this, or I saved a ton of time by doing this, you'll have everyone's attention. Does that make sense?
We actually do that internally as well. So we use Slack, and we have like a Slack channel for tips and tricks, and we share, hey, look, there's this new product update out, look at this. And it's a really good, and it's a really healthy way to, I think it's a bit of healthy competition as well, because it's like who looks like they know the most and things like that.
The other Slack channel is a good source for this, as well as our achievement Slack channel. So we got a huge achievement Slack channel when we close some business, gets a notification, but we also have an achievements channel if something goes really well, and particularly if we get feedback from a prospect or a client saying, actually, hey, that was really good, I enjoyed that. So what you're doing there is you really getting people to encourage them to show their best work, and then you can take that best work and turn it into best practice by getting everybody else to do it as well. So a process of, if you want something to become best practice, you do it. Show it as to it actually working. Show it as your best work, and then turn it into best practice by sharing with your colleagues. It's a nice KPI thing. It's a nice thing to motivate and get the team moving on things as well.
I think so. And I think that's kind of all we've kind of got time for. I know we've got 4 minutes left. So just from the both of you, what's one thing that you would say to people to take away from this session? It's hard because there's been a lot of insight, but just pick one.
You want this from the people on
No, from you. Sorry, from you, Nigel, and you, Eric.
Oh, from me.
Do you want to go first?
You can go first, Eric. I've got something, but go ahead.
So I would get all of the rules that everybody's coming up, all these ideas, all these processes, and bring them together in a single document for principles. What are the principles we are going to follow? And when you put them all in, you've got to test them. It's hard to do, but you want to make sure that you've got no contradictory principles in there. And look at what your leading one is. We are doing this because we want to drive margin growth. We want to get from here to here over this period of time. That's number one. That's the whole reason why we're doing it. Underneath that means that we all have to use the CRM to the best of its ability. So we're going to aim to use all of the functionality. Whether we think it's a good idea or not, if we use all of it, we'll find out where does best work happen and how do we turn best work into best practice. And all of those other ideas that we come through this, test them out, talk to your team and try to create maybe 5, tops 10 principles that you should all follow in order to achieve principle number 1, which is your growth goal over time. And cut out everything else that doesn't fit within that. Don't do it.
Nice. Nigel?
Great. Yeah. So my thing is this is a behavioral change challenge. It's about creating new habits and changing mindsets. I think that a kiss of death is when the manager announces, hey, we've got a new CRM system. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. That is not the way to do it. The way to introduce it is to do the opposite of that. Say, hey, we're looking at changing our CRM. This is going to be a huge amount of hard work, and it's going to be really, really frustrating.
Very honest.
Absolutely. So we're going to need a lot of help from everyone in here to get us over this. Before we do that, let's just make sure we are absolutely clear as to why we're doing this and what's in it for each of us individually, because we don't want to take on this big challenge without being crystal clear on that. And I don't want to be, as a company, go out on a limb here without knowing you guys are all behind what we see as a huge investment in you to save you time and help you make money.
Amazing. Okay, and we're at time, and we did it within time, so I'm quite impressed by that. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Eric, so much. I definitely learned quite a lot today, and I'm sure everybody else did. If we didn't answer some of your questions, just drop us a direct message on LinkedIn and we can answer it directly. I'm going to share the recording, going to share some tools, and hopefully we'll see you at the next hug.
There's some great stuff there to capture for best practice in the chat there, Bridget. Some good stuff.
Amazing. Thank you all for your contributions. It's been great.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.